Galactic material worlds. It is time to talk about the existence of material worlds in galaxies. We already know about the endless rotation of galactic nuclei in autonomous galaxies, which, rotating, having different directions of rotation, make it possible for these galaxies to have their own, unique material micro and macro worlds, functioning and stabilizing, inside their existing gravitational galactic magnetic fields, constantly rotating cores in these galaxies. In the solar systems of galaxies, on the planets, conditions are created for the formation of these closely interconnected micro and macro worlds, representing common material worlds. The goal and peak of the formation of these worlds, with the constant complication and improvement of the species appearing in these worlds, must necessarily be the emergence of the most complicated creatures with a developed brain. Different worlds. Movement to other galaxies. It is clear that due to the gigantic distances between possibly existing worlds, it is unlikely that it will be possible to simply fly from one galaxy to another galaxy without a gravitational accelerator connecting spatial regions that pull gravitational magnetic fields with different potentials. And just like that, to take it and quickly fly, without consequences, from one galaxy to another, it also won't work if the nucleus of another galaxy to which you need to fly will rotate, having a different, opposite direction to the direction of rotation of the galactic nucleus, that world from which they want to fly. For example, people who are on the planet Earth, in the galactic field of which they were formed and to which they have already become accustomed, together with all the changing generations, in their galactic world. Therefore, it is reasonable to replace the word flight, from one galaxy to another, with the word transition, or movement. Perhaps in the future, before the collision of galaxies, the Milky Way, with the galaxy Andromeda, Earthlings will want to visit this other, opposite to our world, Andromeda galaxy, while Earthlings may have problems adapting to be able to find them, in this other galaxy, on some of its planetary worlds. And if you want to know whether the existence of material worlds is possible, which may be different, opposite, in relation to our material world, then we can talk about this right now, without waiting for others to start talking about it. If life exists in other galaxies, then you need to understand, with a possible, certain percentage probability, that it may be different, at least in something, and besides, it is also opposite to ours, if the central core of that other galaxy will have the opposite direction of rotation to the rotation of the central core rotating in the Milky Way galaxy. There are various fantastic films in which astronauts, in groups, or individually, fly to other worlds, to other planets, and there, in these fantastic films, everything is the same as in their world, on Earth, and the conditions are similar, and even the spoken language of the local aliens living there does not differ from the earthly one. Joy, indescribable from the fact that in other worlds, on other planets, Everything is everywhere, just like on Earth. Earthlings, who quickly found themselves on such a similar planet, in a completely different galaxy, go wherever they please, not noticing anything that could somehow negatively affect them. So, suppose a group of astronauts, quickly, almost instantly, after a ring flash, moves to another unknown galaxy, to one of its planets, on their starship, turning on the engine, which has a superluminal gravitational accelerator. Astronauts get out of a starship to another planet, experiencing excitement, due to a sharp movement, from one world to another, because they ended up on a completely different planet. Adaptation. A small digression. There is such a concept associated with the sea, or with the ocean, as decompression, caisson sickness, and in order to overcome it, divers have to gradually rise from the depths, sea, or ocean, to the surface, gradually getting used to the atmospheric pressure of the planet located on surfaces. And this is only on their planet Earth, to which the organisms of divers have already largely become accustomed. I bring under comparison, with moving to another galaxy that has a reverse rotation of its central galactic core. Although, all these astronauts who flew to another planet, as well as divers, have already become accustomed, on their planet Earth, not only to the atmospheric pressure located on the surface of their planet, but are accustomed to their material world, but more precisely, to the rotation of microparticles, rotating from left to right, around the nuclei, in their microcosm. What will happen to these astronauts, and their desire, immediately after their transfer, to go to this other planet, in the hope of visiting some local bar, where alcohol is also probably popular among local aliens, and is available to everyone, like and on a planet called just Earth. Of course, these astronauts first needed to know about the possible negative impact on them, and on their health, of another opposite galactic gravitational magnetic field that exists in another galaxy. Upon entering the gravitational field of this galaxy, which has the opposite direction of rotation of its central core, opposite to the rotation of the core rotating in their galaxy, from where they flew, the astronauts will immediately feel something not entirely right with their health. Their material bodies will begin to abruptly rebuild, for the possibility of existence in this other galaxy, on one of its planets, in the microcosm of which, the microparticles of this material world, have a different, opposite nuclear direction of rotation around, influencing the physiological state of living organisms, the basis in which blood is, with its transfer function of oxygen delivery, as part of the organic hemoglobin molecules of erythrocytes. Any drastic changes at the molecular level can lead to serious consequences for people whose organisms will not be prepared and not adapted to the conditions of this other world. It's not like flying to Mars, although even there, for delicate organisms unaccustomed to survival in other extreme conditions, they will have to face the problem of adaptation. But this cannot be compared with the problems that the astronauts who have made the transition will have to go through, accustomed to their material world and to their native galaxy with its central core, rotating in the direction familiar to them, finding themselves in a completely different galaxy, having the opposite direction of rotation of its galactic core, which creates another, gravitational magnetic field. Astronauts who abruptly move to this other galaxy, to one of its planets, with the help of a super light gravitational accelerator installed in their starship, found themselves in the field of action of a different, magnetic, direction of rotation of microparticles, then these astronauts will no longer be up to desire, visit some alien bar. In addition, it is possible that on another planet, to which the astronauts will move, there will also be a different, changed gas composition of its atmosphere. Let's think that on that other planet there will be an atmosphere, otherwise Earthlings cannot survive there. And even a small difference in gas concentrations present in the air can lead to the fact that the reorganization of their organisms will also be required. So, the caisson disease of divers, gradually rising to the surface of the sea, or ocean, on their home planet, will seem to them just a slight ailment, in comparison with the stay of astronauts in another galaxy that has a gravitational magnetic field, in the microcosms of which, microparticles have the other around is the nuclear direction of rotation, opposite to the micro-world that exists on Earth. Special chambers for adaptation to the conditions of life in other worlds. In this case, the time of adaptation in a special chamber, to another, opposite world, will increase by a time interval equal to not 1 month, but several, and possibly up to half a year. And it is not a fact that any of the astronauts who have moved to this other world will not be able to force their body to readjust to the opposite rotation of microparticles in this other world. Therefore, checking the astronauts for the possibility of reorganizing their organisms, for the existence of these astronauts, in the conditions of other worlds that have the opposite nuclear rotation around, needs to be done on Earth, before the astronauts travel to other worlds, other galaxies. Starships should be equipped with special chambers for the astronauts' adaptation, on which the astronauts will have to make the transition from one galaxy to another, which has a different, opposite rotation of its central core. And if the galaxy will be very far away, to which you will need to move, and the transition to this galaxy can be long and take a lot of time, then this time for adaptation can be used to get used to, and reorganize the astronauts' organisms to exist in the conditions of another opposite galaxy, being in a forced sleep. Will the body of an astronaut, who is in a special chamber in anabiosis, be able, at the same time, to gradually rebuild his body for existence, in the conditions of another world, which has the opposite, around a nuclear rotation of microparticles? In the future, when travel from one galaxy to another becomes possible, scientists will definitely have to do this research. A special chamber is a sealed device, inside which a special gaseous environment necessary for the life of the test subjects and the necessary atmospheric pressure are created, as well as, in this case, a gradual adaptation to the opposite rotation of microparticles in the microcosm of which the astronauts will find themselves. In this special chamber, an Earthling traveling in space moving to another planet will be able to gradually adapt to life in other conditions of existence, in which the microparticles of this world can have a different, opposite direction of rotation, created by the rotation of the galactic central core of another galaxy. This is in theory, but whether the organisms traveling to other galaxies of astronauts can really readjust to that other world, and adapt to life in this other opposite world, this is a question that remains open. Yes, and this question will be of interest to those who will deal with solving these problems in the future. Complete reconstruction of organisms for the possibility of life in the conditions of another world, the core of the galaxy in which this world is located, has the opposite rotation. There must be a complete reorganization of organisms, astronauts, for their possibility, life in another world, which is opposite to the earthly world. After what will have to be experienced by those who have made the transition to another opposite world, for the possibility of existing in this other world, having passed a long period of adaptation, then, I don't think that there will be many who wish from those who go through this period of adaptation and want to return to again get into their world, their home planet. Because before returning, or when returning to their native material world, which will become, for these astronauts, now the opposite, because they will again have to go through a long period of adaptation. And only newborn, in these worlds opposite to Earthlings, at birth, will receive full adaptive fitness for life, in the conditions that exist on these other planets. That is, if a couple of astronauts who have moved from planet Earth have a child on this other planet, then this newborn child will receive full natural adaptive fitness for life in this other world. And just take it and move along with your child born on this planet, so that grandparents living on planet Earth can take care of him, then, without long-term adaptation, you can't do it either. Influence of other, opposite galactic magnetic fields on material objects. When abruptly moving to another opposite world, not only living beings that find themselves in a different gravitational magnetic field, which has a different, reverse perturbation of microparticles, can undergo changes, but also all material objects, like the spacecraft itself, which abruptly fell into the zone of this other, gravitational galactic magnetic influence, another counter-rotating magnetic field. Because everything that is material, which will abruptly move to another opposite world, will be forced to change, being in another galaxy, under the influence of another rotating gravitational magnetic field, creating the opposite, around a nuclear rotation of microparticles, and the same, opposite around the solar rotation of the planets in this another world. Although, around the solar rotation of the planets, in another macro COSM, it will not have a noticeable negative impact on the health of those who arrived from another macro COSM, compared to the effect that the astronauts will have on their being in another, opposite microcosm. What will happen to the hull of the spacecraft, as well as to the physical, material objects that are inside this ship? One can only guess. All objects belonging to and located in the micro and macro worlds of our Milky Way galaxy, which has its own direction of the galactic core, were formed and stabilized in the galactic field operating in this construction structure, and cannot exist without their complete reorganization. If, for example, we take and abruptly move these material objects, and even more so living beings, from one galaxy to another galaxy, in which the nuclei of these galaxies have the opposite rotation, only nothing good, abruptly ending up in another microcosm, this rapid movement will not bring. Again, starships that will exist in the future will have to have their own gravitational magnetic field generated by them. Returning to the present, problems may arise due to a lack of understanding, or due to a lack of proper attitude to the most important component of the galactic functioning of galaxies, namely, to the direction of rotation of the central nuclei in galaxies. We may be wrong, but all our actions should be directed to the benefit of all planetary humanity, which should have a future where everyone living on the planet should be proud of the fact that they are representatives of the entire planet Earth, and not just some. Then its individual regions and territories are developing independently. To be continued. Anatoly Sem, June 30, 2022.